In today's video, I'm going to be answering a question from a community member on our Addiction Mindset YouTube channel asking about weed withdrawal symptoms and the process when it comes to quitting smoking weed. Michael Hernandez, 3220 comments, "Anyone out there, please help me. I'm desperate for an answer, but the internet isn't really providing a sufficient one. Should I taper off weed or quit cold turkey, so just abruptly stop? I'm concerned about not sleeping for a few days and my job, but at the same time, I don't know if tapering off will work. I'm desperate for an answer. Thank you." I have a few responses to this comment that hopefully is going to help Michael out. Comment number one is there is absolutely no guarantee that you're going to experience withdrawal symptoms, one of those being the insomnia that you're concerned about. And if you're in the process of quitting weed, I think it's good to watch videos like mine and other videos on YouTube so you have a series of expectations of what you can expect, but those expectations should be not set in stone because your experience quitting weed might be very different from my experience, which might be very different from someone else's experience. And what I often see happen in some cases is people become paralyzed when it comes to quitting because of this fear of withdrawal symptoms that they may or may not go through. And sometimes people become so fearful of these withdrawals that they read about on Reddit or that they see me talk about in my videos, they never even try to quit. They become paralyzed in the quitting process. And I think this is a tragedy because for some people, truthfully, the insomnia might only be a day or two. For some people, it might be a few weeks. It really varies person to person. And we're not going to know how this is going to play out for you without actually seeing you attempt the quitting process. Now, I have some advice to make that a little better, but I just want you to take note if you're watching this, Michael, or anyone else who is, are you paralyzed when it comes to quitting because of fear that might turn out to be nothing more than a false expectation appearing real based on the experiences of other people? And this is the danger in Reddit forums and videos like mine when it comes to trying to set expectations for people to quit. Tip number two, you absolutely don't have to get it right the first time. And that's one of the beautiful things about weed addiction. Typically, we're not facing a fatal overdose potential if you were to smoke again. And this expectation that you're going to quit the first time and that you're going to do it perfectly and that you're going to have perfection in your quitting process is often a flawed ideology. Statistically speaking, it takes people more than one try to get it right. And this goes for a lot of things in life, right? I can think of a lot of things in my life that I tried, I failed, I went back, reassessed how to do it again, tried again, failed again, tried again, failed again. And this was certainly true of myself when it came to quitting substances, nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content, things that our channel helps people quit. But the expectation of perfection the first time around is another thing that might prevent you from quitting in the first place. So I want you to kind of let go of some of that anxiety of what's going to happen, what's the best approach out there, because the answer is no one really knows. There is no perfect approach. And you can see that in the comments that people left you on this previous video that you commented on. There was about 5 or 6 people who commented what worked for them, and it looked a little bit different for each of them. And you just have to try. You just have to try. And that's how you're going to find out what eventually works for you. But don't get tied up in this idea that your first time quitting has to be perfect. Because if it doesn't work, you can go back to smoking, or if it's too much, you go back to smoking. And then you reassess next time around and you try something different. And I'll tell you something. There's a lot for me that I learned in my failure of quitting. It was actually very beneficial for me because I learned how to cope with failure. I learned a little bit about perseverance when it comes to making a commitment to something and eventually seeing that something through. I failed a lot of times when it came to quitting smoking weed. And after I quit, I failed a lot of times in my businesses, and I failed a lot of times in my relationships, and I failed in numerous categories of my life. I failed over and over again. But it was through my sobriety process, in which I failed a bunch of times, that I learned that if I just keep trying, that if I just keep putting forth the effort, eventually I'm going to succeed. And this was a great life lesson for me. It was a life lesson that taught me not to be afraid of failure. And it wasn't just watching a motivational video on someone talking about not being afraid of failure. It was actually going through the process of failing at something and then eventually achieving success, okay? Tip number 3. Can you taper off slowly, or should I taper off slowly? Absolutely. And there's a possibility that tapering off slowly might reduce the withdrawal symptoms for you. For me, I've talked about on my channel, I'm not one for moderation. And I actually personally found trying to taper off slowly and trying to moderate my weed consumption was a very, very painful process for me because I'm inherently not a moderate person. So the pain of moderation for me was equivalent to the eventual pain that I experienced during the withdrawals. I wouldn't say that one was less painful or less annoying than the other one. Both were painful. In my experience, though, quitting cold turkey was a pain that I was more willing to pursue than the pain of trying to moderate. And I'll say this when it comes to weaning off slowly. Yes, there might be a benefit to that. You might decrease your dependence on the substance. Your body may begin making its own endocannabinoids again as you're tapering down and your body's getting used to a lower external source of cannabinoids from the cannabis plant. But some people will wind up tapering off slowly, and then they spend the rest of their lives quitting. They spend the rest of their lives tapering. And that's not something that I would want to see you fall into. Don't spend the rest of your life trying to stop doing something that you actually don't even want to be doing anymore. That would be my tip to you, Michael, when it comes to that. So it's not wrong to taper off slowly, but there are, I think, some pitfalls that come to tapering off slowly, and I just explained those to you, so hopefully you avoid them. I will say there is no ideal time to quit. As a professional and as someone who was in my professional career when it came to quitting, there was never a good opportunity for me to stop. There was never a good time to go through detox, to go through withdrawal, to go through insomnia, to go through sweating, things that I experienced that you might not experience. There was no good time to do that because I was always going to have a reason not to throw myself into detox and withdrawal. I can't operate at work on a high performance level. I'm going on a vacation and I don't want my vacation to be ruined, so I'm going to bring weed with me there. I'm going to get weed when I'm on vacation. I have a birthday coming up. I have a big event coming up. I have an exam coming up. I just need to be clear-headed. I think what you're going to find is that it winds up being just another excuse, a very valid excuse for not quitting. But just because our excuses are valid doesn't mean that we have to give attention or validity to those excuses. And for me, the excuse of how am I going to function at work was just one of a million excuses that I had saved up in the piggy bank of my mind when it came to justifying continued use. And this is one of the ways that addicted voice and that conversation that we have with ourselves in our heads manipulates us into carrying on with the addiction. So make sure that that's not something that you're falling for, okay? This manipulation of an endless pit of excuses as to why now is not the right time to quit. And I would challenge you this, if you're worried about work, and you're worried about your work performance, I want you to consider what is high performance in your career, in your job. And in the state of active addiction, are you really performing that well? And the answer is probably not, because otherwise I don't think you'd be quitting. For a majority of people I work with, and myself personally, one of the reasons why we're quitting is because we know we're capable of more. We know we have more potential. And weed, we feel, is hindering us in that potential. So I would challenge you to assess your career right now in your job and ask yourself, Am I really performing to my maximum potential right now in active addiction? Or am I quitting and stopping to reach a higher level of performance? And remember, performance isn't just making money and doing good at work. It's high performance in all aspects of life. Are you doing better at work in lieu of sacrificing your health? Right? Because that's not high performance. If your job and your performance is dependent upon an addiction that's damaging you mentally, physically, psychologically, for whatever reasons you want to quit, then you're not performing how you should be anyways. That's not what I would consider high performance, okay? The last thing I'll say is this, and this is kind of a simpler tip. You can certainly look into supplementation when it comes to quitting, and I don't necessarily recommend doing that right off the bat, but you can if you're really that worried about it. CBD, in absence of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, if you don't know what that syndrome is, please look it up, because if you have CHS or cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, you don't want to take CBD. But a really high quality CBD product that's fully absent of THC can be beneficial for people when they're quitting delta-9 THC products. CBD can help. It can help with sleep, can help with mood, it can help with all that stuff. Now, the supplements I most often recommend are N-acetylcysteine to help with the brain fog, and KSM-66 ashwagandha to help improve a person's tolerance for stress, to help a person better manage stress and feelings of anxiety. KSM-66 has also been shown to help with focus, and NAC has been shown to help reduce cravings. So those are two good supplements. You can find capsules on Amazon or at Vitamin Shop, whatever your supplement store is. And I'll plug my own product now at the end of my video. We make a chewing gum. We're the only people in the world to make this. Kick It Crave Less chewing gum. It contains KSM-66 ashwagandha and N-acetylcysteine. You can learn more about the chewing gum, which is good to help people with nicotine addiction, weed addiction. In the pinned comment or the video description, I put a link to our products and other both paid and free resources when it comes to helping people quit. If you guys enjoyed this conversation and you do need more support, be sure to check out our Addiction Mindset Recovery School community. It's a community in which I go live a few times a month, working with people in a group setting, answering questions just like this. And if you have a question that you feel needs an answer, and I think it applies to a bunch of people, I'd be happy to make you a YouTube video as well. So be sure to drop those comments and questions below. I'll be keeping an eye on them. Until next time.